and see if it's working. But yep, we're here. Let's double check.
Across all platforms.
Across all platforms, although the metadata is still not coming in the right way, but we are live across all platforms. We've got to switch from Riverside, y'all. So we welcome everyone to the latest episode of the Liberal Report. We have, as you, I think, missed last week, but we've been trying to do more of these. I'm going to briefly go into the show here and change the metadata on YouTube so that we can have this correctly done. Yep. Boom. All right.
You'd think they'd have it figured out to where you could just have that all set and press a button and go. But
yeah, well, we've got some viewers trickling in, so welcome everyone. Thanks for taking the time to watch. Thanks for taking the time to listen. We're going to pull up live stream chat and we're going to watch that tonight. So yeah, fantastic. So let's get going here. So today we had a couple topics we want to discuss. I think the one thing that, by the way, actually, before I do that, let's introduce everyone. So you guys know me, Josh Eckel. I'm the president of Project Liberal. I've got Jonathan Casey, the co-founder, director of comms. Thank you, Jen, for taking the time.
Yeah, glad to be here. So it's been a kind of a whirl. I know we missed the past couple of weeks. For those who don't know, or sometimes our personal lives and professional lives get in the way of our passion projects. So glad to be back on.
You've got kids. I've got kids. We've got satisfactory levels to win. I'm still pissed that you beat me in beating Satisfactory by 1 day on the 1.0, but I'm gonna try to recover from that. And Max Marty from Steering, thanks for taking the time, Max. Appreciate it.
Hey everybody.
You guys have had some.
I do not have kids.
That's why he looks rested and well. He looks rested and ready to go.
Much more relaxed here, don't worried about anybody busting. Well, maybe my cat might come in, but we'll see.
My kids are up at the in-laws for the week, so I'm a little more rested than usual. But you guys have had some great podcasts recently. You've had some fantastic guests on. I run those down a little bit.
We haven't even released some of the good ones yet. We've got two. So we've got Pekka from Vatnik Soup, who we just interviewed. What was it, Max? Last week.
Last week. Yeah.
Got his book. I've still got it on my desk here. I haven't finished it yet. But he's first of all a phenomenal guest. He's incredibly intelligent and articulate about just exactly how Russia uses their propaganda networks to affect American discourse. And basically, we just kind of sat down with him for an hour and went through how this propaganda has been seeping into our conversations and how it works and kind of all the structure behind it. It was a very good conversation. That'll come out probably next week, I think. We just finished an episode with Shoshana Weissman from R Street. That was also, I think, Max and I that handle that one. And that conversation was about AI regulation. It was about free speech online in Section 230. Shoshana's an awesome guest. That one's up on YouTube. We just got that up, I think, last week, and I promoted it yesterday. And the real fun one that Max and I just did today was with Mike Brock from his former CEO of TBD. It was a subsidiary of Block, which was formerly known as Square. I know that sounds super boring, but he's basically got a lot of background working in Silicon Valley. He has had very similar journeys ideologically that many of the people in our community have. He's a strong advocate of liberalism, and he's got like a finger on the pulse on kind of this crazy dark enlightenment stuff that's going on in Silicon Valley. So that was a fun conversation too. I don't know if you had felt the same way, Max, but I thought it was great.
Yeah, I thought it was great, and I appreciated that we could get into some like kind of more theory stuff on some libertarian questions and that kind of stuff. It's near and dear to my heart, and I know a couple of you guys' hearts. So it was a fun conversation. If you care about how do you define things like the common good and property right and how it all fits together, and then how does that stuff play into the philosophy and ideology that has developed in Silicon for the past 10, 15 years. That to watch.
I'm a big nerd, so it was fun. Sorry, John.
Sorry, I keep talking at the same time. I've seen some of the Pekka episodes. Obviously, you guys just recorded the Mike Brock one, and I'm looking forward to that conversation. because as somebody who still has ties to the Libertarian Party and movement, I still hear the discussions around these things, particularly around how the Libertarian Party has kind of really veered off course recently, and how libertarianism itself is kind of in a battle. It's interesting how it's defined itself over the past 50, 60 years by the non-aggression principle, and how that principle has been so bastardized by Hoppianism and late Rothbard. They've really kind of veered it and used it to justify things that are beyond the pale of what of libertarianism should be. And it's interesting how many times I hear this from the people who are still in the Libertarian Party and Libertarian movement, how they are talking to me, asking me about, they're asking me about liberalism and the Liberal Party. And while, we're not officially associated with anyone, it is really interesting how libertarianism is really at a crossroads right now, I think. And so I think it's, we've taken on the mantle and mantra of liberal, and we are liberals. And I think a lot of people are going to follow in our footsteps from the libertarian tradition. Our goal is to attract anybody and everybody to our philosophy, because we do think, obviously, this, liberalism is something that we either preserve or we lose just about damn near everything. So.
Well, the one thing that was the most interesting to me, and I am a recovering libertarian, right? One of the things that was most interesting to me is just how much, and again, we'll get into the episode. This wasn't even on the agenda, so we won't spend too much time on this, but just how much of Hoppian property rights centric kind of a liberalism that we've seen schisming the libertarian movement is like at the foundation of this new dark enlightenment, this new right. These people are in the same camp, and explains a lot of things about like why the movement's schisming. But that's not even interesting to most of our audience, because hell, half of our audience doesn't give a shit about libertarianism. But it was an interesting, for the sake of this podcast, but I think Mike did a really good job of laying out how they were all connected. So that'll be a fun episode to release.
People may not be interested, but I do think it's a really interesting case study, particularly how American libertarianism, because 50, 60 years ago, liberalism was very much it was very similar between Europe and the United States. And, the United States, out of American liberalism, the libertarian movement kind of grew and really changed into something that European liberalism never quite did. And so it's a really fascinating case study. And I always wonder if that's the American psychology at work. Is that just we're so isolated, we don't have to really think about the rest of the world as much? If you live in Europe, you have been in constant threat of, if it wasn't the Nazis, it was then the Soviets, now it's Russia. So you're under this constant threat of invasion, or at least there's the hint of it is always there, and the socialism and communism is right there, and you're in many of their past. And so I think Americans, we've kind of been so insulated from some of that we that the philosophy of libertarianism has really kind of veered itself into the worship of property, I think, is kind of how I would describe it. Above the collective protection of individuals. That's what liberalism is. It's the collective protection of individual liberty, and it has to be collective. It cannot be. You cannot be just individuals.
I'm figuring out how to use this streaming service, so I'm sorry for keeping to pop up comments on the stream. But this comment is exactly what we discussed on the podcast that we're going to release later next week, which is, again, this kind of a libertarian worldview where, and Max, I'm curious as to your thoughts on this before we get into the actual agenda. This libertarian worldview about how it's so centric, it's so focused on just kind of, it feels to me to be like it's a selfish, like the motivation feels very selfish to a lot of people. So when you explain libertarian philosophy to its extremes, a lot of people just don't resonate with it. Max might be able to elaborate a little bit on this, because we talked a bit about this with Mike earlier today. But I'm seeing some comments in here that are kind of to that point.
Yeah, we went over this a lot with Mike today, so that would be for anybody who's interested in this topic, you should definitely tune into that podcast episode when we release it. But I don't know, John. To me, the libertarianism that I always saw, and I came from a very different place, but because I spent 10 years in Silicon Valley, and that's where a lot of my political feelings developed. Like before that, I was basically just somebody who said, who took an economics course and then thought, wow, this is interesting stuff. Like, this is true. Why doesn't anybody believe this? So I went and became an economics major, and I was like, oh my God, why don't anybody understand this? And then I left college, and then I was like, okay, well, how do I put these ideas into practice? So that's where my libertarianism came from. And that's why, to me, it feels very different when you're talking about, like, well, Hoppian property rights and whatever. I'm like, I don't even, I love Hayek. I love Friedman. I saw a little bit of Rothbard, and I was like, nah, I don't like his temperament. I don't like his approach. He seems kind of like a dick. And and then Hoppe, I just heard some pretty unpleasant things about him, and I was like, no, I have better things to do with my time. So I think we just see it from two very different perspectives and two very different worlds. But yeah, as soon as I started seeing this transformation in people who called themselves libertarians, I thought, ooh, that's no longer me. Maybe at some point, I could relate to that. But now I walk in, if I tell people I'm a libertarian, they're going to get a very different idea of what I really believe, which is, which I would have called classical liberal, and now I've been persuaded is
It's just
pure
liberalism.
liberalism. I think is a good way to, it's the right descriptor.
That's all it is. Well, I don't want to ruin it, John. I don't know if you have anything you want to add, because I do want to tell the audience a little bit about the agenda, what we're going to talk about, because we have some topics that we want to discuss. There were a couple things that came up in the news this week. Trump had a town hall in Univision, which went about as well as you could expect. And there was a viral moment from that I wanted to share and then react to. And then Kamala went on Fox News yesterday, I think. And it's funny to me because when I watched that interview and read the reactions, it felt like everyone was reacting like it was good for the lefties were like, oh, she dominated Bret Baier, and then the right people were like, oh, she got creamed. And in reality, I think she absolutely had some incredibly viral moments out of that, which was interesting. And then there's all this conversation. The one thing that's been super exciting for me, and I'm sure you two are feeling the exact same way, is the Democrats are going full-blown free trade now, man. Like, Mark Cuban was at a Kamala rally today in Pennsylvania, I believe, just freaking tearing into tariffs. Like, he spit all. It was amazing to see the Democrats they've been going this direction, but just kind of really leaning into the free trade stuff. And then we want to talk about Elon Musk. I mean, Max and I have kind of like separate viewpoints on this. I think Elon Musk is a really pernicious negative force right now in society. I think Max is a little bit more optimistic about, or at least positive about his achievements, so we want to talk about that too. But unless you guys have any qualms or anything you want to add, I was thinking we could go straight to Univision and react to like the clip from that show. John?
Let's go for it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Now we'll see if the stream works here. So this was from yesterday, and let's see if this will work. Tell me if you guys can hear this.
No, I cannot. I'm assuming the audience can't either.
No,
Sometimes you have to stream it with audio. There's a weird setting that you have to select.
Okay, I'll get there. We're gonna get there. I promise. 2 seconds. Almost there. 3, 2, 1. Hitting the button. Screen. Tab. Boom. This should work now. Let's turn on the audio.
Okay. I am a Republican, no longer registered though. I want to give you the opportunity to try to win back my vote. Okay. Your I'd say action and maybe inaction during your presidency and the last few years sort of, was a little disturbing to me. What happened during January 6th and the fact that, you waited so long to take action while your supporters were attacking the Capitol. Coronavirus, I thought the public was misled during coronavirus. and that many more lives could have been saved if we would have been informed better. And also people in your administration who don't support you. I'm curious how people so close to you and your administration no longer want to support you. So why would I want to support you? If you would answer these questions for me, I would really appreciate it and give you the opportunity. There's, your own vice president doesn't want to support you now.
Thank you, Ramiro. So the people that don't support a very small portion. We have a tremendous, about 97% of the people in the administration support me. But because it's me, somebody doesn't support, they get a little publicity. The vice president, I disagree with him on what he did. I totally disagreed with him on what he did. Very importantly, you had hundreds of thousands of people come to Washington. They didn't come because of me. They came because of the election. They thought the election was a rigged election, and that's why they came. Some of those people went down to the Capitol. I said, peacefully and patriotically, nothing done wrong at all, nothing done wrong. And action was taken, strong action. Ashley Babbitt was killed. Nobody was killed. There were no guns down there. We didn't have guns. The others had guns, but we didn't have guns. And when I say we, these are people that walked down. This was a tiny percentage of the overall, which nobody sees and nobody shows. But that was a day of love from the standpoint of the millions. It's like hundreds of thousands. It could have been the largest group I've ever spoken before. They asked me to speak. I went and I spoke, and I used the term peacefully and patriotically. If you look at the Democrats, what they say, you look at Maxine Waters and you look at Hillary Clinton. And
So
it's the thing that strikes me is how how egotistical he is. Everything is about him. The people don't support him because they're trying to get publicity out of it. I'm sorry, but Mike Pence is not doing what he said. When saying what he's doing is not doing what he's doing because of publicity. In fact, that's the last thing he probably wants right now, is to get more publicity over this issue. And also, millions of people in DC at the time. I somewhat doubt those figures. But hang on, what I find funny here is that he talks about how it was a tiny percentage of people who marched on the Capitol. But when they marched on the Capitol, it wasn't that big of a. It wasn't that bad. Nobody got killed. Ashley Babbitt got killed, but nobody got killed. I'm not sure how you square those two things. But why, if it wasn't that bad, why does it matter that it was only a tiny percentage of them that marched on the Capitol that day?
I think the interesting thing that the West takeaway for me was that he said we.
Yeah.
So first of all, that's an expression of his viewpoints, right? So that's, he sees those people as part of him, like his group, rioting and causing damage. 6 police officers did die, so that's a lie. And Ashley Babbitt. They all, died directly because of what happened on that day. And to this day, refuses to take responsibility and accountability for what happened. That's not a surprising thing to anyone at this point. And still goes after Mike Pence. I love this moment. I mean, dude, I thought this clip, this shot right here, when he's rambling, and you've got this
the two women just staring him down. And listen, I grew up in Texas. The last thing you want in life are two Hispanic women staring you down. That is going to be a bad day for you.
But he's kind of driven himself into a corner because, like, all of it, since he's had this whole thing going on for so long, his whole persona is kind of attracting to these the Stop the Steal type of people and conspiracy theorists at large. So at this point, they really are his people. They're a big portion of the constituents that are going to actually vote for him.
He made this movement.
Yeah,
right? He could have denounced it. I mean, they were waiting. I remember this very clearly on January 6th. The reaction was chaotic to how to react on that day. I mean, I had friends of mine, and I saw messages of people saying, "Oh, this was the Antifa infiltrators." And if Trump would have come out that day and said, "This was Antifa," that leaned into that for months, that would have been the narrative, despite all the things that came out proving otherwise. Because it doesn't matter. The truth doesn't matter. It's whatever he says. Stop the Steal would never have happened without him. He's the architect of this. And as the leader on the right, he has a responsibility, obviously, not to make violence more likely or not to lead his followers into fall. But he's a complete malignant narcissist. He has no ability. He's like psychologically unable to cope with loss.
I don't think it would have been possible for him to come out and say those are Antifa, because those individuals were exactly the right kind of person that Trump likes. They just adore him. They would follow him in. I mean, they literally are going to commit felonies on his behalf. I mean, they're like cult members, right? So that's exactly what he feeds on the most. These are the last people he would throw under the bus, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. So, John, you were going to say something before we go to the next topic?
He kind of has this. We talk about cults a lot, and it's hard to really. We don't have another word in the English language to describe what we're seeing from Trump supporters, because they go on these rants about the mainstream media, about Trump derangement syndrome, about all these things, and they claim that they're doing their own research, and then the results of this research that they're doing is just batshit crazy. And I don't know how we fix this. I don't know how we reach these people, how we talk to them on their level, or not even on their level, but how do we get them to listen to what we're saying?
You want me to tell you?
Go for it.
You want to know? You don't want to know the way to do it? There's two things I'll say. The first thing is these people did not come to these opinions because of reasoned, intelligent. It's not a reasoned position. Okay. And this is going to sound a little goofy, but I actually think this is. I've been thinking about this a lot. They did not come to this from a reasoned position. Okay. There's like this kind of conspiratorial programming that they have. I will speak to this with a little bit of conviction, because I can tell you with a high degree of confidence that growing up because I was grown up in a homeschooled K through 12 evangelical church. I was raised by people that were very deeply committed to like alternative medicine, a lot of these other things. I remember these types of narratives 12 years ago about Obama's birth certificate, and then and then this kind of whole idea of these kind of weird conspiracies. They keep popping up in a variety of ways. Like my family, they don't believe this anymore, but many of my family when I was growing up believed the Earth was 8,000 years old, and I was raised with like young Earth creationism and all that. It's not like they're coming to this from a fact-based perspective. It's like they have an ideological conviction. I honestly think, and I'm not going to act on this because I think it would be unethical, but I honestly think the best way to kind of weaponize this and pull these people out is to like weaponize conspiracies against them. And I mean this in this way. I've never seen a post. I saw a post the other day from somebody who took a screenshot of Elon Musk jumping at the MAGA rally, and he had a belt buckle on that had the satanic circle on it. And there was this guy, I gotta find this meme now, where he put it over there and he showed that there was a Masonic symbol of distress with your hands in the air, and they put Elon Musk over it, and they showed the satanic symbol and the Masonic symbol of distress, and it was like, this is a satanic Trump rally. And I'm like, this would be 10 times more effective against my family than any amount of, you know what I mean, than any amount of factual argument that I could put against them.
Well, it's wild because you'll have people talking about how, the Satanists control the world, all while retweeting Elon Musk, who is literally in a satanic costume in his profile picture for like a year. And it's like, how? Like, he's literally wearing a satanic costume, and you're talking about how he's going to save us from the satanic order that's coming. It's like, my God.
He's the richest man in the world trying to put.
But John, he's just doing it ironically.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just ironically. Oh, but that's what he wants you to think, Max. But this is just it. Their logic.
That's true.
Their logic only works one way, right? Because it only works. It only works to twist the narrative into the one that they want to believe. Never works the other way, right? It's they talk about, oh, you believe the mainstream media. And what I love is when you point back, okay, who do you believe? The alternative media, which has actually less fact-checking ability, less responsibility to actually reach the truth, where the mainstream media messes up, they get sued for hundreds of millions of dollars. The alternative media doesn't, because it's really hard to go after those people. It's a lot easier to go after the mainstream media when they mess up than the alternative media. And right now, the alternative media, the people that they are following, are willing to say anything that gets attention, anything at all. And yet, you can prove that their sources lie constantly, and yet they still talk about the mainstream media as if the mainstream media is the evil one.
Oh,
Where they're
I had
trying to undermine everything. And it's like, guys, if the alternative media keeps lying to you, and yet you're saying, okay, but I still believe them when they say this. Or they're trying, I love it that they talked about, they were up in arms about a while back when AOC was alleged to have said something like it's more important to be morally true than factually true, right? And they jumped all over her. And I don't think she actually said exactly those words. She was more describing other people's position. But now they're doing the exact same thing where I lost my camera here. So when AOC says that, they jump all over it. But when their side constantly talks about, well, it's okay to lie. It's okay to lie as long as you're trying to get to the truth. Look at the cats and dog stories.
John,
Eating cats.
I mean, I had a friend of mine tell me this the other day, and it's just shocked. I guess it's just like programming. I had a friend of mine say, I want Trump to win because, the best part about Trump winning is that the mainstream media loses their mind and they hold him accountable, because they're a lot more crazy. Whereas when a Democrat's in office, they don't really care. And so at least people pay attention to Trump. And this was his quote unquote libertarian argument for Trump, right? Completely wacky. CNN gets between 500,000 and 1 million viewers for regular programming. The Joe Rogan Experience, 7 to 11 million. Alternative media is bigger than legacy media now. And alternative
Isn't
media.
Fox News how big is
Probably
Fox?
smaller than that. I mean, that's CNN.
No, I think Fox is. I remember hearing that Fox is bigger than any other network.
Fox is bigger than all the other networks, and most of them combined.
Now this is again.
But it's not near Joe Rogan numbers as far as I can
check my
recall.
numbers on this. But I mean, okay, Fox is 1.5 to 3 million, is what I'm reading here. So it's still a lot smaller than say Joe Rogan. But then you also have to remember that with all these alternative media systems, we talked about this multiple times on the show. These, or like the Tim Pool show and all these other shows, they are getting millions of impressions over a period of time, and they're getting paid by, or at least allegedly getting paid by Russian propagandists. And they're reaching just as many people as legacy media is when you kind of count the social media impressions and stuff into those figures. There's just not even an argument. The mainstream media is not a threat. Legacy media is alternative media is much bigger of a platform. Nowadays it is, not 10 years ago.
We as humans tend to build up boogeymans in our head, and the other and the enemy, and we make a mountains out of molehills on many occasions. It's kind of our speciality.
So Fox News, I've got a good pivot. Unless you got something you want to add to
Well,
that.
no, I kind of want to finish out my thought real quick because I've been thinking about this a lot. We have spent centuries developing as a human species. So we have spent centuries developing the scientific method of the ability to create a theory, come up with a theory of how the world works, and then test that theory, look at the world and observe what's going on, and test a theory against it. And we've somehow, with all the information basically that has existed at our fingertips, with access to vast swaths of data, so many people seem to be abandoning that scientific method of coming up with a theory and testing it against what the facts are. And I've heard several people opine about this, about how the world is just getting so complex, right? That we've solved a lot of the, I think it's Destiny who talks about how we've solved a lot of the simple problems in life, right? We've essentially ended world poverty. It is going away at an astonishing rate. We know that free trade works. We know how to reduce unemployment. It's capitalism, right? We've solved a lot of these simple problems. And we have a really hard time with these complicated problems. And so as the world itself gets more and more complicated, as the solutions get more and more complicated, as the technology that we use day to day gets so complicated, the average person doesn't understand it. it used to be that you could, everybody understood how a telephone works, right? You hold up a telephone to your ear, a magnet bounces around, sends an electrical signal. That's pretty simple to understand. I have a phone right here that has more computing power than was in the entire existence 60 years ago, right? And I have a pretty good understanding of how a computer works, but I don't really know. Like, I couldn't design a system to make it work, right? I get the basic concepts of it, and I have a greater understanding of it than the average person who just looks at it as a black magic box. And so, I wonder if we're coming into this technological time period where everything's magic. So why don't we start believing in fairy tales? So why don't we start believing that dinosaurs didn't exist? So why don't we start believing that there's a Jewish cabal, satanic cabal controlling everything, right? So I wonder if we've gotten to that point that science is so advanced, it's getting to that point, that science is so advanced, it just looks like magic. And so therefore we start believing all these other fairy tales around us, if you will.
I think it's just the fact that our education system sucks. What do you think?
Oh, that's part of it.
I was just pushed back, right? I think we're still apes. Even the world has gotten a lot more complicated, but it's not like in the past people were, rational empiricists that were triangulating in on evidence and using Bayes' rule Bayes' theorem to understand, the probabilities of no. Most of the time, most people in the past didn't have to think about these kinds of things. They weren't bombarded with so much information, so much data, so many different ideas, people saying this and that, people who they like and trust okay, this person says this, it must be true, and they just believe that. It's just that there were very few sources actually followed in the past, and obviously back during the the 80s, there were just a few cable news channels. They were all kind of far more boring than and people just kind of had an idea. Okay, this is generally what people believe, and there were error bounds for what individuals might believe, but not anywhere near the kind of information that we're exposed to now. Not anywhere near this kind of fire hose. So I think it's asking a lot of people that are, even if they're better educated than they were in the past, the amount that you have to understand, the amount of bullshit that you have to be able to sift through,
Yep.
and how good your bullshit sifter has to be, is way beyond where it was before. Really, I sympathize with a lot of these. Like, it's hard. Sifting the truth from falsity is hard, and a lot of times it's just easier to, hear something, you like to think it's true, so it's true. Because what is it really going to change your life, whether it is or isn't, right? So, like, whether whether coronavirus was entered in the lab and then specifically released in order to infect the population by China or not, is it going to change anybody's life to know to really have a clear opinion on that, to have read 7 books on the subject? No. What's their life is when they go to the pub, they go to they go to the bar, they talk to friends. Do they more or less say what their friends want them to say? Are they still wrong? It's these kind of social realities. And for most people, social reality is what matters, not empirical reality. I think so. In other words, I think we are unusual. We're a little strange. I like being strange in that way, but I admit I'm a little strange because I care about real truth, not just social truth. So I would just I try to give a bit of a break.
I
think yes, you're right. We should show more grace. There's no doubt, and I think that a little bit of pessimism of my own is shining through on that. And you're right. The vast majority of human history, we have struggled just to stay alive. We haven't had time. The vast 99.9999% of humans in history were just wondering where their next meal was coming from. Was wondering when the rain was going to come. Right? They didn't care about global geopolitical politics because part of it, most of human history, that didn't exist. Right? You knew about the tribes around you. You maybe knew about the king over there or the king over there, or you got invaded every once in a while, right? Like you had but to the average human, these things didn't matter, right? And maybe we've blown a lot of these geopolitical issues way out of proportion, right? But yeah, you're right. Human history, we've not had to deal with the things that we're dealing with now and today with so much information. You're right. It is. We have an information overload, and it shouldn't. I guess it shouldn't surprise us that we don't necessarily deal with it in the most rational way possible. Because you're right. We are some apes banging some sticks on some pots and pans sometimes.
And one of the things I want to say is the
Yeah.
way that materializes, the way that misinformation vortex materializes is not, it's not very complicated. It's literally like, to Max's point, you see something that you think validates your opinion. The way that happens in real life is you're literally sitting there scrolling social media, and you see thousands of things a day, and you go, oh, that sounds like it's right, and you move on with your life, and then you see something else, right? It's such an immediate and quick thing, and it's the way that it's the world that every single person is living in. I get caught up into it. I find myself seeing things, and I'm like, oh, that has to be right, and I'll find out a week later that was wrong, and I kick myself for it, right? Because I maybe said it to somebody else or I promoted it. I mean, that's a real problem, but that's a whole nother problem.
Before we move on from the Univision thing, do you have the clip of the farmer asking what Trump would do with the jobs left by undocumented workers of low-paying jobs? Did you see that clip? That was
I did.
Commenter commented on
Yeah,
it
let's
or
actually
brought
do
it
that.
up, and I think that's another really good clip while we're still on this discussion.
It's a little long, but it's like 3 minutes, but maybe I can skim it. So let's do it. I actually did think it was a great question, and his response was completely incoherent as usual.
He trabajado toda mi vida con estas manos, agachado por horas, piscando fresa, cortando brócoli.
Good evening, President Trump. Many years I have worked with these hands, hunched over, picking strawberries and cutting broccoli.
Este duro trabajo es realizado en su mayoría por gente indocumentada.
This tough job is mainly done by undocumented people.
Si usted deporta a esta gente, ¿quién haría ese trabajo y qué precio pagaríamos por la comida?
If you deport to these people, who would do that job and what price would we pay for food?
Please. Finished, yes? So the problem we have is we had people coming in under my administration, and they were coming in legally. They were coming in through a system that we had, which was great, because I'm the best thing that ever happened to farmers. You know that. I was great. You know, farmers are doing very badly right now, very, very badly under this administration. Under my administration, farmers did very well. We have to have a lot of people come into our country. We just want them to come in legally through a system, because they've released hundreds of thousands of people that are murderers, drug dealers, terrorists. They're coming in totally, nobody knows who they are, where they come from. And the people that are most against it are the Hispanic people. They are totally against it, what's happened. The other thing I can say is that a lot of the jobs that you have and that other people have are being taken by these people that are coming in. And the African American population and the Hispanic population in particular are losing jobs now because millions of people are coming in. So they're coming in, but they're also coming in largely, and tremendous numbers coming in out of mental institutions. They're emptying out mental institutions. They're emptying out insane asylums. That's a step above a mental institution. Worse, bigger problems, bigger problem people. They're emptying out jails. Their jails are being let into our country from Venezuela, but not just South America, from all over the world. They're being let in from jails, from nobody's ever seen anything like it. The jail population throughout the world has come way down, and it's all coming into the United States of America. So we want workers, and we want them to come in, but they have to come in legally. They have to love our country. They have to love you, love our people. The problem with this administration is they've totally lost control. It's the worst president and the worst vice president that we've ever had in this country. What they have done to our country in terms of hurting it. Our farmers, by the way, are dying. They haven't had anything so bad in 25 years. 4 years ago, our farmers, including you, were making a lot of money. They were doing great. Now they're absolutely dying. We're going to turn it around. But we want people to come in, but we don't want murderers. So it was just announced that by last month by the Border Patrol that under Biden and Harris, they allowed 13,099 convicted murderers, people in jail, to come into our country. They released them from jail into our population. And nobody wants that. And that doesn't include the terrorists and all of the others, the gang members, MS-13 gang members, and other gang members. We have to have people that are great people come into our country, but we do want them in, and I want them in even more than you do. And we're going to make it so that people can come into our country legally.
So, well, first of all, that was a really rambling.
He didn't answer the question.
Yeah, there was no answer to the question, like, what are you going to do here about this? If, like, what are the, he never answered it at all. I don't know if you guys know this, but if you look at, like, metrics from the Border Patrol, border crossings over the summer of this year are at, like, lower levels than they were the summer of 2019, which is when the problem, like, his last term, his last year in office. So problem solved. I mean, the same challenge. If you have immigrants that are here illegally and they're captured, they are deported. I'm not, sorry, John.
Biden and Kamala have deported more people than Trump has, by the way, or on a year-by-year basis. So listen, why did illegal immigration drop in 2020?
Because
we had a pandemic.
Yeah.
And the economy crashed, or not? Well, it crashed. Job availability went bottoms up. And if there's one thing that predicts illegal immigration, it's the availability of jobs. And so you can look at the course of when jobs become available, illegal immigrants come here to take jobs. That's why they come to America, to make money, to provide for their family. And
they also create jobs, just to be clear.
Right. Oh, absolutely. No. Yeah.
Jobs is offset. It's like that whole argument that they take away wages. It's not quantified.
Yeah. There, if you look at the actual data, the percentage of Americans that are harmed by an immigrant coming in and taking their job is an extremely small fraction of the population, whereas the vast majority of Americans benefit from immigrants.
Wage elasticity, last I checked, from Cato, I believe, was something like, they said the closest figure they could find was 0.2% negative decrease on wages.
Right.
But that doesn't fully account for the fact that, first of all, immigrants create more businesses than Native Americans on net, so they're more likely to create businesses and become entrepreneurs and hire people over their time. It also doesn't consider fully the scope of their demand. And that's the thing that these nativists don't understand, is that when an immigrant comes over comes into this country, it's actually a win-win for the American public, because immigrants consume less welfare than they pay in taxes. So they pay $1.30, 34 cents in taxes for every dollar they consume in welfare benefits. They're more likely to start a business, and their demand is something that drives economic growth and actually raises people up. So it's not a compelling argument to me, and it's all based on fear. It's all based on fear. I mean, like, even this whole anecdote that the Republicans use around, like, Aurora being taken over by Venezuelan migrants, like, the Republican mayor of Aurora came out last week and said that was completely false. That's not happening. That we've had some criminal gang activity. Those people have been arrested, and it's being overblown by the president for political purposes.
There are a couple things that I wanted to also add in about the video, which was two things that he said. One was that I heard him say this. Anybody else hear him say that? He said, we want a lot more people to come in legally. Does he really mean that? I mean, I hope so, right? But I doubt it. I haven't seen anywhere else that he's proposing, like, how many more, visas is he proposing? How is he going to expand illegal immigration? I would love to see that if true. I doubt it. I would love to see it if true.
His followers would lose their minds if he promoted an increase in legal immigration. The person that's promoting an increase in legal immigration is Kamala Harris. She wants to increase employment-based visas.
Well, she has an actual plan. I'm sure Trump just has a concept of a plan. But no, if he wanted to increase legal immigration, he could have done that in his first term, and he didn't. He did the exact opposite of increase legal immigration. He shut down many legal avenues to come into this country. He intentionally shut down. So I don't believe him at all. But you keep going, Max.
There's one other thing I think I wanted to highlight here, which was when he said that Hispanics are totally against what's happened or what's happening. And I think maybe, I don't know the statistics on this, but there are a lot of Hispanics that really do have that opinion of immigration is out of control. We need to get it under control. All these people are coming here illegally. We need to put a stop to that. And anecdotally, I've seen this. So my family's Hispanic. You know, they come from Cuba, and so when they came here, of course, Cubans were easily granted citizenship. There was a very clear path to citizenship. This was in the 60s and, to many extent from the 70s, 80s, and even 90s. So there were clear paths for them to get citizenship, which Cubans everywhere have done, and they've done very well. But a lot of that group now feels like, okay, this has gotten out of control. We need to stop more immigrants. So at least in that portion of what you're saying, a lot of Hispanics really do feel that way. And I find it almost shameful, a sad reality, the ones who feel that way. Like, how could you or your family have come here, made a great life for yourself, improved the lives of your children, had a future, whereas in many of these countries, they're really not as much of a future. And now you want to be here like, F you got mine and close the door? Like, I'm always surprised when I hear that and saddened when I hear that.
The thing that disturbs, it's just the fact that people look at immigration as so zero sum is just such a disheartening thing, because it's just genuinely not. And I think some people's motivations are fear. Some people's motivations are xenophobia. I think there's a lot of people just think that it's like, oh, we've got this fixed pie and we've got to protect this fixed pie. And I actually think that's really all it is. And it's actually the same motivation that causes these leftists to be like, we need to like take all this stuff from billionaires. It's like this fixed pie of money that we own, that we have, that we've got to take it and redistribute it, rather than thinking about what could happen if you allow more growth and you allow more people and you allow more innovation. How much more prosperous could you be?
There is a tendency, and I think we've seen this through history, of immigrants and new immigrants and their children kind of pulling up, shutting the door behind them mentality. But I also think that there's also this mentality of, well, why did we leave where we came from? And to some degree, it's because of the people that were there, or at least they can blame the people that of the country that they came from, because of the environment from that country, right? So the culture that they're leaving, whatever the reasons that they're leaving, there's kind of a judgmental judgment of where they came from, right? There's a reason why they came to America. But I challenge them to think, well, why are those people trying to get to America? It's probably almost the damn near exact same reasons you came to America, and your parents came to America. So I think that we have to be cognizant of the fact that other people have motivations for doing things, and they're probably not too dissimilar to your own. But yeah, it's a common thing we see among immigrant populations to kind of pull up the gate behind them as they come across. I don't know all the psychology behind it, but it is an interesting phenomenon.
Well, actually, this is a great pivot, because we've been here for almost an hour, and I think we try to keep the show between an hour and a half. We wanted to talk about Elon Musk at some point tonight, and to me, it seems like there's probably no better example of somebody who fits the phenomenon that Max you just described to me than Elon Musk, is somebody who was a self-professed illegal immigrant at one point in time, came over from South Africa, built a company, a series of wonderful companies, with the exception of, I guess he never really built X, or sorry, it's not X, it's Twitter. Never really built Twitter, but bought it. But I mean, I think Max, you and I have spoken about this. The things that he's done with SpaceX, for example, has been incredible. And he really could only have done that in the United States, and now he's hitching his post to the most xenophobic, authoritarian candidate we've seen in a generation, and trying to pull the ladder up behind him. I wanted to maybe open a conversation about Musk broadly, because I mean, he's in the news every day. He's been in the news this week for that rocket landing, but
And I believe both of you are pretty opposite sides of this. Josh, you are pretty out on Elon Musk. Max, you're pretty fairly in on Musk. I think you both probably see. So, Josh, I'm sure you see a few good qualities or a few results of Musk's activities. And Max, I'm sure you see some downsides of Musk's activities. So let's start there. Actually, I'm going to challenge you both. Max, you need to tell us something that you find disturbing or completely disagree with, or are you thinking that Musk influences the world in a bad way? And Josh, you have to come up with something that tells us you think a way that Elon Musk influences or has done something good for the world. And then we'll flip the sides back to where you want to be and go at it that way. So one of you got to start.
let Max go first.
Yeah,
All right.
I'll jump in here and say that I was surprised at his stance on Ukraine, because originally I guess with when he was doing the whole Starlink thing and like extending Starlink to Ukraine, I'm not even sure. I think it still is extended, or maybe it's not anymore. But anyway, he extended Starlink access to Ukraine at the beginning of the war, and I thought, wow, this is great. That is exactly the kind of Elon Musk that I want to see. Someone who's who understands the geopolitical realities of what Russia is doing and the ramifications of a Russia succeeding in Ukraine, what that could mean not only for Ukraine, but for Europe and for the rest of the world, and for China's resolve and interest in moving against Taiwan. I mean, the spillover effects of a victorious Russia under those circumstances. I was like, okay, so Elon gets it. Maybe, this is great. This is a good sign. And then he just started to roll that stuff back, comment after comment, where he's disparaging what's going on there. He seems to be kind of, he seemed to be like, I don't know if you guys saw, but like he seemed essentially ambivalent towards Russia succeeding in that. So to me, the Ukrainian situation is hugely important. I think it for a while it was very important, at very top of people's minds. Then it kind of departed everybody's minds, but it's still there. It's still going on. It's still huge. And to me, it's one of the biggest reasons that I think Trump could be very dangerous if elected, is because of his unclear stance in that particular foreign policy entanglement. And actually, I don't think anybody's clear exactly on what Trump would actually do. Well, we all know, of course, he would put an end to the war within the first week or whatever he says, right? Yeah. Right. But, other than that, we have no idea what he's actually going to do. But that to me is very dangerous, because we know that he has had some sympathies, Trump, for Putin. So anyway, Musk's support or ambivalence or whatever he had towards Ukraine, towards that whole situation, to me was a huge disappointment. And even more so than, I try to tell myself with all of his stuff supporting Trump, and so like, well, maybe he has some business interest, some specific reason, something that we don't see. I think he's wrong. I think what he's doing is a bad idea. I don't think he should be supporting Trump this way. But maybe behind the scenes he has some, weird reason. Fine. That I disagree with. But the Ukraine thing, that to me is beyond the pale for him to turn on.
Interesting that you say that. You're gonna really make it hard for me, John, making me say something. Well, I've got to say something positive. Is that the rule here? Because
yes.
I'm on the other side. Okay. Oh my God, I've got my list of negative. I think the single greatest thing that he's done is the innovation around SpaceX has been historic. I remember watching the first, I think it was a Falcon rocket land in 2015. And it was just it was a triumph of capitalist innovation and entrepreneurship. It was, to me, that moment, watching that rocket land was like equivalent to like watching, somebody land on the moon in a lot of ways. That was incredibly historic, and it's changed space travel in an incredible way. It's radically reduced the cost. We put all these satellites in orbit. It's saved the taxpayers tons of money. It's improved our national security interests. It's been great. So I think that is probably the one thing I could give him credit for. Been good.
All right. Now with that, we're past that painful exercise. Let's open it up. Max, why don't you take it off on why you think Elon Musk is a force for good in the world more than he is a force for bad? Let's define it on that. Do you like those? Do you like those terms to the debate? I don't think we ever clearly defined what the debate was going to be about. But a force for good, or is Elon a force for bad? Take it away, Max.
I think ultimately, and this goes back to our conversation about the fact that we're just, hairy apes, hairless apes, actually, compared to most other apes, trying to do the best we can, with what we got. And it's not, we don't have all the tools to even begin to understand how the world really works. It's just so complex. It's so difficult to wrap your head around for anybody, even the smartest people out there. And the most important tools that we have to improve our lives and to understand that world and to explore that world and to really fulfill and become the kind of humans that we want to become, right? All of us are doing things right here, right now, that we could never, if we were back in, the 1,000 years ago, we couldn't even dream of it. We couldn't have any understanding of this. We couldn't have an understanding of the world, the universe, the microcosmos or the macrocosmos, all of this stuff. And at the heart of all this is technology. At the heart of technology is entrepreneurship, is the ability to take risk, is the interest, is the drive, is the dream, is the vision. And Musk, I think, is the current personification of that. So Musk is the individual who has created. It's not just SpaceX. Tesla made a whole bunch of improvements on battery tech, on self-driving, on electric vehicles, obviously. And just that one company, other than SpaceX, has pushed forward a bunch of stuff in the energy field. It's pushed a bunch of other competitors to try and do the work to get up to where he is. I don't have a Tesla, but I do have an electric vehicle, and I can guarantee you that electric vehicle, I wouldn't have it unless Musk had been pushing the envelope with Tesla. And then other car companies had to respond to that. So in other words, that progress, that technological push, I think, is what is eventually going to allow many of us to kind of look beyond, to get beyond our lowly origins here as the hairless apes that we are. And Musk is the embodiment of that. And if we didn't have people like him, I think we would be in a much worse position. And all of this would be wouldn't have nearly as much meaning. I think the fact that the world is improving, the technology is improving, that we're learning more, that we're pushing the envelope, gives life meaning, gives civilization meaning, gives humanity meaning. And Elon Musk is, whether you like him or not, and obviously I have a lot of my problems with him on that front, he is the embodiment of that. He's the biggest person pushing that forward today. And I think that puts him in the camp of aggregate good.
All right. Let's hear the opposite from Josh. Is Elon a force for bad? Take it away.
So Elon Musk, I think, is just like Trump. He is the real only value that he brings to the equation is in marketing. So don't get me wrong. There are at least anecdotes that say Elon Musk has been involved in some of the engineering stuff behind SpaceX, but he's really only doing these things with an army of engineers and intelligent people at his side. The real thing that Elon Musk has done throughout his career is marketing. That's like what he brings to the table. Elon Musk has this history of buying companies, rebranding them and calling them something else. So like Tesla was created before Elon Musk. He bought it, and he claims to be the founder. That is not the case. There were two individuals that founded that. He was not one of them. His value that he brought to the table was going to the public and kind of making this compelling green energy case and talking about electric vehicles. I don't think that I think in that political moment, like our society was primed for that kind of thing. And I think that if there was any, there could have been a slew of different intelligent communicators that could have come in and kind of ridden that wave. I don't think Elon Musk is necessarily unique in the sense that he was a marketer at that moment in time. and he was an entrepreneur to that degree. I'm not going to undermine the work that he did to maybe advocate for those things. So I just say that I don't really buy this idea that he's some sort of like super intelligent scientific engineer genius man. I think he's basically a marketer, and as somebody who is a marketer myself, I can't, I think there is value to that to some degree. But Elon Musk over the last several years has weaponized his wealth and his influence to drive America into outright authoritarianism, and his work in this moment has the ability to undo every single positive thing that made it possible for him to get ahead in society. So Elon Musk, in 2022, there was something that happened, right? Like, it was right after. I mean, I remember to Max's point earlier, the Ukraine thing's a great example. I mean, remember the day that Putin invaded Kyiv, and Elon Musk was tweeting, "Hold strong. We're going to send Starlink. We're going to help you." Over the last 2 years, his rhetoric has completely descended. He's literally repeating things that you would hear on Russian state TV. We just talked about this with one of our guests on the podcast. We'll release that next week. Literal quotes that you only hear from Russian propaganda. It seems to me that he's compromised to some degree. That's an alleged. I mean, it's impossible to prove that at this moment, but the way that he's communicating, constantly boosting Russian narratives, Russian false information, seems to me that he's kind of going down this path where he might have some sort of other influence driving him to do that. But if Elon Musk succeeds in mainstreaming authoritarianism via Trump, literally every single bit of success that our, like this, the entire system that made it possible for him to succeed, he could tear down in a heartbeat. And I think it's really driven by self-interest. Like, he gets an incredible amount of money as a federal contractor from the taxpayers to launch these things. So it's in his best interest to be well in with the president. It's clear that he's had a fall from grace. I remember watching, seeing clips of him, of Obama going to the SpaceX factory and walking through it, and then Biden snubbed him, right? I mean, that was a famous thing where he wasn't even invited to this EV roundtable or something that happened, and he put Ford and GM up there rather than Tesla. And so I think he's got a personal chip on his shoulder. And it would be one thing if he was kind of going about this in a way that was what you would see traditionally from somebody who maybe had a lot of wealth. Like, hey, look, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna make a public endorsement. But Elon Musk has taken the largest social media platform for political speech. He has taken it, purchased it. He's weaponized it in a way. He's basically taken the algorithm to benefit Trump. I mean, it's very clear that this basically what they alleged the Democrats did in 2020 to help Biden through the Twitter algorithm. He did that on steroids. And it's not just that he's like algorithmically boosting Trump content and using his platform to influence it. He's also absolutely boosting rhetoric that is neo-Nazi fascist rhetoric, great replacement theory. This claim that immigrants are coming over to replace you and it's a Jewish conspiracy. He's spreading anti-Semitism. He's basically mainstreaming neo-Nazi ideology through this platform, and he's giving them legitimacy in our political system. So if he is, now here's the thing, Max, if Trump does not win, maybe you could look back retroactively and say Elon Musk was a net positive of SpaceX because he failed in 2024 to overthrow the U.S. government. But I think that if he does succeed, it's going to completely undermine every bit of positive work that he's done, and it could unravel the entire system that made him possible. He's not a free speech advocate. He's boosting some incredibly authoritarian and the kind of rhetoric that leads to genocide. And I think he's doing it for personal reasons, or he's compromised. And I think that's really, really, really damaging to our system, and it undermines any respect I had for him.
I want to make a quick observation on this because I think it's really interesting, the two different arguments we have here. Because on one hand, Max, you're both looking at how he appeals to people. The way I look at it, because Max, you're looking at how he appeals to people in an entrepreneurial spirit and thinking about beyond planet Earth, extending the human species, about reaching the stars. And Josh, you're looking at how he appeals to the Trump crowd, the MAGA crowd, how he appeals to kind of the pro-Russian sentiments. So it's just really interesting to me that both of you are latching on to how he appeals to people in different groups and in different context.
But
whatever
visionary, optimistic, forward-looking, dynamic character Elon Musk was is not who he is now. He's not inspiring people to look to the stars and achieve big things. He's inspiring people to believe fascist rhetoric. He's inspiring people to think immigrants are coming to eat your cat. You know what I mean? Like all these lies that he's spreading.
Do you think that there, Max? Do you think that there has been a shift in his rhetoric over the past several years?
I think he is still inspiring people to do to imagine going to Mars and all the amazing stuff. I mean, look just how many people were talking about SpaceX being able to capture the rocket. What was it, like last week or whatever it was? Look how many people were tweeting about that, talking about that, going on about that. Everybody was like so excited about it, right? So I still think he does that, but I would also agree with Josh that he unfortunately does a lot more than that now. And I would say that if Musk was the factor that pushed Trump into the White House, that's pretty bad, and I might have to reconsider. Maybe I guess that would depend ultimately on what does a Trump, like how negative is the Trump presidency? Is it a little bad or is it very bad? Where does that land? What is that? What is that? Old phrase, don't judge a man until you've closed his coffin or whatever. So I think it remains to be just how bad the situation will end up being if Musk pushes Trump into office. I think we will see.
It'll be a 25th Amendment, JD Vance president, no certification of electors, JD Vance God King for 40 years, something like that. So
You're such an optimist, Josh.
I would say that like again, going back to the marketing thing, I kind of feel like, well, first of all, I mean, he's tweeting all the time. There's a lot of people saying he's like disengaged from SpaceX and he's really just kind of a figurehead at this point. So, there's that to mention, like at least over the last several years. But then there's also, he said we were going to go to Mars. What was it? 4 or 5 years ago was when we were going to be there. He said in like 2011 it was going to be 2021, or maybe it was 2013, 2023. It doesn't. It's
So I think, Josh, I'll push back on you a little bit on this because I think you're kind of missing the forest for the trees on some of this. Elon Musk is a salesman. I don't think there's anybody here who's going to dispute that. But I really don't think you would have SpaceX develop the products that it's had or the success that it's had without Elon Musk. I don't see. Sure, there may have been another company that evolves or comes out because obviously the market desperately needed a company to step up and fill that role. But again, SpaceX has many other competitors, has always had many other competitors, and none of them have come close to the innovation and technology that SpaceX has had. And even if Elon Musk was simply a figurehead of those things, that's still an important role when you're trying to win the public's imagination over, which SpaceX has done. And let's not, somebody mentioned Obama just a little bit. Let's give Obama a round of applause real quick for opening up and privatizing the American space industry. Like that in and of itself was a moment in American history that I think is way underappreciated.
Was there tangible legislative action taken by the Obama administration to make it possible for him to do that? I didn't know that.
I forget exactly the situation, but yes, Obama absolutely opened up the privatization of the space industry and enabled it.
Just to follow on that point, John, in the 90s, General Motors created and released, in a limited way, but released an electric vehicle that didn't completely suck. It was called the EV1, and I got to see it. I didn't get to ride around in it, but I sat in it in the 90s. I was a kid. And it was awesome. It looked cool. It looked futuristic. The technology in it was amazing and incredible. But we instead delayed the rollout of the electric vehicle revolution 20 years. Why? Because we didn't have a good marketer, right? We had the engineers, we had the minds, we had the scientists. We didn't have a good marketer. And I think if somebody like Elon had been back there at GM and had been involved with the EV1 project or had been a high up there, that could have turned out very differently. And that's the kind of thing that I'm saying that, yeah, the outcomes and the effects of an Elon type of character might be like, well, yeah, whatever. They could happen 10 or 20 years later. And this is an argument that Matt Ridley makes in how innovation works. He's like, it's not about the great man. It's about, eventually when other sort of technologies are kind of all coming together, the thing that we're thinking about will sort of pop up because it becomes almost inevitable at a point. But that's if you're looking at very large pieces of time, very long pieces of time. But for us here in the now, it matters whether this happens 10, 20, or 30 years from now, or it happens today. So I think we should not underestimate the importance of marketers. By the way, Steve Jobs, that was another guy who was basically a marketer.
Yep.
Right. And he changed a lot of things. He changed the phone and the mobile phone industry. He changed the computer industry. He changed all kinds of stuff without being the engineering head of the company. So, yeah. So I don't discount the marketers. You're a marketer, Josh, and you're really important.
That's why I said at the introduction is if I start shitting on marketers, I'm shitting on myself because that's literally all the value I bring to the market here. It's just
a quick point, and then I'm going to take my Max to task a little bit on this. I don't know. Elon Musk absolutely had a vision for the electric vehicle about creating an ecosystem that could support it, creating a manufacturing system that could produce it at the cost that it needed to take off. And I don't know that anybody else had that vision. I think eventually it would happen. But he certainly, without Elon Musk, I think it certainly would have been delayed a long time. But Max, going back to kind of take on kind of your point, you talk about how Elon Musk inspires greatness, goodness in people in some tangible ways. Doesn't it concern you when you go onto Twitter? I don't know how often you're on Twitter, but when I go onto Twitter these days, I'm kind of with you there.
Nazism on my feed.
It is really truly disturbing. The cultural shift of Twitter, not even talking about its external influences, but the cultural shift within Twitter has been changed. It used to be a pretty nasty place. Now it is full on neo-Nazis and racists coming out of the woodwork all over the place.
I mean, I've gotten death threats. I've been doxxed.
Same. Josh and I have both dealt with. I mean, I've had the fucking FBI call me about death threats against me. So, this is stuff we've had to deal with. Now, I'm not saying that's Elon Musk's fault, but I am saying that this is something that has evolved, that has grown under his encouragement to a certain extent. Doesn't that give you a little bit of pause, seeing what's kind of happened on an internet platform that Elon Musk has created, and knowing that will spill over into the culture at large? How do you answer that?
I think it's terrible. I think what he's done with Twitter, now X, even just renaming it X, that was his first big mistake. But no, I think what's happened there has been a travesty, and it's in many ways ruined what will be, I think, a very good reputation of a great entrepreneur, a great risker, a great visionary, and a great marketer. And that's why we are having this conversation, this debate, because what he's done is appalling, ridiculous, and has already caused a lot of damage, right? He's already helping fuel and funnel and add fuel to the fires of a lot of conspiracy theories and a lot of unhinged people. But that's, to me, why it still remains to be seen, exactly how much damage that political aspect of him is going to ultimately do. And I think a lot of it will depend on whether or not Trump can be seen, Trump, the amount by which Trump, if he wins the election, can be attributed to Elon Musk's efforts. If it was that close and Elon Musk was what pushed him over the edge, then I think the debate, I would have to go back to Josh and say, Josh, I think you might be onto this. I think your side of the fence might win. But as long as that doesn't happen, or as long as, or if Trump wins by so much that we're like, okay, Musk was not what made the difference, then I would say, despite turning X into a dumpster fire and a breeding ground for conspiracy nuts and whack jobs of all kinds, that on net he is still a net positive. And I hope it's maybe this is a crazy, you know, I'm as crazy as those people on Twitter for hoping this, but I hope that he gets off this politics train. I don't think this is doing him any favors. I don't think this is improving humanity. I don't think this is making the world a better place. You know, let go, because I get he was slighted by Democrats, and you know, maybe he got really upset at all this woke stuff like everybody else. But you know, we figured out more productive, better ways to deal with some of those negative elements on the left. Why can't he figure it out? You know, why can't he come join us on the classical liberal side of things, rather than whatever game he's up to right now? He has so much potential, and he's going to squander it because a lot of people, unfortunately, the next companies that he tries to start are going to be kneecapped. Now, he might still succeed because he's Elon and he's got the money, whatever, but it's going to be a lot harder because he's been kneecapped by this ridiculous approach that he has and these political ideologies that he's pushing forward.
I mean, we've seen Zuckerberg come to the classical liberal side apparently over the past
I think it's a
few
marketing
years.
play.
So, you think it's a marketing thing?
I think he just got himself a marketing person.
I mean, it is funny how public perception of Zuckerberg has shifted over the past few years.
now he
I wouldn't
hates-
be surprised
now he-
if it was
yeah.
a marketing team.
Now he hates the Hunter Biden laptop thing and that he did, and he's a libertarian now, and he's surfboarding up with an American flag, and he's dressing like every youth pastor I ever had when I was growing up. You know, I don't know. I just think he's doing a rebrand thing. So
It is going to be interesting, particularly if Trump loses, to see what happens to this weird MAGA energy that's out there, right?
I think yeah.
it's going to be real. I don't know. I truly just don't know what's going to happen to it.
Well, here's what I hope happens. I hope that, and I mean this genuinely, I hope that the people that have committed crimes, that the leadership level of MAGA go to jail. I think it would be good for the country if that happens. I actually do mean that. I think the real reason why Trumpism has become such a malignant problem is because he's never been held accountable for anything he's ever done in his entire life. If Mitch McConnell would have made the decision to hold him accountable after January 6th, none of these problems would have happened. I think you need to make the house of cards come crashing down. You need to hold him accountable. You need to hold the people around him accountable. Those cult members are going to tear off piece by piece. That cult will still exist, right?
We've already seen it tear itself a little bit apart with the Laura Loomer situation, with a few other situations. We've already seen the cracks.
Oh,
It'll be
there's so many
interesting to
cracks.
see.
I mean, that's the thing. Well, once the cult loses their figurehead,
The personality.
they are going to turn on themselves, man. You know that's what's going to happen, because as soon as they don't have the leader to kind of tell them how to think, like let's say he is actually in prison and he can't talk or tweet or do any of these things, or let's say he does die in a couple years, which I think is likely, that entire movement is going to collapse. I mean, you've seen this with cult after cult. If you lose that figurehead, unless there's some very clear heir apparent that kind of comes in and takes it over, which I really don't know if there is anyone, maybe his son, I'm not exactly sure. I don't think anyone could capture that energy, because it's like 40 years of programming, right? I mean, he's literally been a figurehead, like he's been a media figure for 40 years. I remember Donald Trump when I was a kid, and my parents knew of him, you know, before that, right? And so you're not going to replace that. I think he needs to be held accountable, and I think that cult just needs to kind of fizzle out. Now, if he wins, the MAGA movement is going to be a fixture in American politics for the next several decades, because
I think
somebody
that's-
will.
Don't you worry, like if he is held accountable, that's the sort of narratives that feed him. Like
don't
his people love when he's quote unquote held accountable. They eat that stuff up. I mean, every time he's thrown into a courtroom, his numbers go up, not down.
But he's not been held accountable for jack shit. And look where it's brought us, right? Like he's not been held accountable for anything. He's been a criminal his entire life. He's taken advantage of so many people. He's been, he's raised with incredible privilege, and he's not treated like any other American would be treated by the judicial system, by the court of public opinion. He's treated as an aberration. And so this whole idea of like, well, holding Trump accountable would be problematic.
Making him a martyr.
Would be, I don't really, I mean,
Yeah.
at this point, what's the alternative is let's just kind of keep giving him point after point after point. And where does that let us? It's led us to the extreme derangement and authoritarianism. So I don't think there's any other choice. Either he goes to prison and his movement fizzles without a figurehead, or he is enshrined
Trump
as a
2028.
yeah, or he's enshrined as a fixture of American politics and it's just Trumpism, right? I really do think that we could go back to something relatively normal if the cult implodes like that, because I think John mentioned we are seeing the cracks are there. All they need to do once that figurehead gets out, it's just going to be infighting all the time. Somebody's going to try to get ahead. Somebody's going to try to become that person, and they're never going to have somebody that's coherent. Because again, it's a cult. It's not like they have an ideological core. It's not like there's somebody who could come in and say, I'm the ideological heir. I mean, look what happened to Ron DeSantis. He tried to do that. He got emasculated, So it's just not going to happen. Again, I could be completely wrong about this, but at this point, I think we've given him enough courtesy. And I think Mitch McConnell did this in a way. I think Mitch McConnell's decision single-handedly could be, that one decision could lead to the end of the Republic, really. And so I think we should stop doing that. I mean, he's had an entire lifetime of that, That's my opinion, at least.
I think there is a danger to Trump becoming a martyr figure, but again, who gets people to the polls if he's in jail? And I don't think that they would have the political sway of getting out and voting for Trump, right? That he currently has. So I think it would certainly be lessened. I don't think it'd disappear overnight. I think you would have some momentum. Because listen, even if Trump doesn't get elected, his family still runs the Republican Party, right? I mean, isn't his daughter-in-law the chair of the Republican Party now? So I think we're maybe wishful thinking here a little bit as far as watching it disappear. I think what you're more likely to see is if Trump loses, 2028 is a complete landslide for the Democratic Party, and then at 2032 we start to see swing back to normalization.
If Trump loses in 2028, I think we'll have a Republican president. You know what I mean? Like, because if there's actually a kind of a competitive process and if somebody kind of comes through the Republican,
I don't think
he's
that
not coming back in 2028. He's going to either be.
But I don't. Right.
Unhinged.
I agree. But I don't think the Republican Party turns back to normal by 2028.
No, not normal, but normal relative to Trump.
Gets a normal candidate by 2028. I still doubt.
Yeah, I
it.
mean, like for example, if Ron DeSantis was running against Kamala Harris, he'd win.
Yeah. True.
And he's a MAGA guy. He's a MAGA populist, but he'd still win because he's. I don't know. I think he would. I need to look at polling to prove that.
But couldn't it be that in 2028, if there's at least one like normal actual Republican on that stage, and then there's a bunch of MAGA people, then the MAGA people all like it's the same thing that Trump did, but in reverse, right? So the MAGA people will all split the vote, and the only sane Republican will like get just enough.
That's like a dream of mine.
Maybe.
Can you imagine? You just described something that's like my wildest fantasy. Like this.
I guess I'm the optimist on this. Yeah.
I really like talking to you, Max, because you lift me up and get me excited. If we could see something like that happen, basically the reverse 2016 and 2028, that'd be phenomenal. And a return to normalcy on the right. Oh Lord,
Tea Party 2.0, baby.
That was not a return to normalcy, John. I'd say.
Yeah. Well, it's really
made
interesting.
Trump.
It's really interesting how the Tea Party movement brought in, on one hand, some great congressmen like Justin Amash. It even got some good, senators, et cetera, and then it also just brought in the crazies. And it's really an interesting juxtaposition of the two. I think this moment's going to have some really interesting books written about it.
Oh, there's plenty of them coming out now.
I know, but until the ending's written, it's not going to be as compelling a story. Once we know the ending to this story, it's gonna be a hell of a read.
I think you'll have a pretty good guess about the ending to the story in about 18 days.
Yep. Is it that close? Golly.
Yeah. I think maybe 17 days now. So.
Whew. It's crazy.
Well, this was a great conversation. I didn't come prepared. To be fair with you, Max, on the Elon Musk thing, a lot of this stuff is just me being repulsed. So, maybe objectively speaking, you are correct. In this moment in time, the net positive, at least when you look at the aggregate, is probably better. I hope that I can say the same thing in 18 days.
Me too. I hope so.
The irony of this, of course, is
Yeah.
that if you're saying this, but if Elon Musk's plans come to fruition, both of you will be on the side that Elon Musk is a net negative, which is kind of interesting that you would argue that Elon Musk is a net positive if his plans fail.
And if
Just
his-
an
if his
interesting
plans-
interesting
if-
note.
His political
That is-
plans. Yeah,
I
not his
think-
Mars
Political plans.
plans.
Political plans. I should
And
should be specific.
If his political plans succeed, then they'll be playing clips from this podcast episode at my military tribunal. So please wish me luck. But
Yeah.
I'm not that
Musk.
important.
Musk, I was trying to defend you here, buddy. Come on, leave me out of it.
He maxed out of it. All right. Well, we're at an hour and a half. So I just do you guys have anything else to add, or are you ready to take it out?
I think we're good.
Thanks
All
for
right, guys.
inviting me.
Well, thanks for hanging, Max. Thanks for doing everything you do, John, and taking the time. If you want to learn more to the audience about Project Liberal, projectliberal.org, become a member at projectliberal.org/member. We got a big update coming up in the next 2 weeks before the election. We appreciate the time, everyone. Have a wonderful night.
Let's catch you guys later.
All right, I'm gonna go to get.